top 10 scary urban legends from the 70s. Bubble Yum. We're starting off the list with Bubble Yum, produced by Lifesavers, with the first soft bubble gum to hit the market in 1975. And it was a big hit. It tasted great, the demand was high, but some started to wonder just how they got the stuff to be so nice and soft. And this is where school kids would use their wild imaginations and start to make up stories of their own. Around 1977, rumors started to spread that this delicious gum was actually made out of spider eggs. Now, this seems completely ludicrous. There are far softer things than spider eggs. The crazy thing is, this rumor actually caught on. It spread fast, and sales of this once very popular gum actually started to decline. This became such a big problem for Lifesavers that they were forced to actually take out an ad in the paper specifically addressing this rumor, with the headline reading, "Someone is telling your kids very bad lies about a very good gum." At number 9, we have the Life Cereal Kid. John Gilchrist was a child actor, most famous for his role as Mikey in a very popular commercial for Life Cereal in 1972. But in the late 70s, a story began spreading around schoolyards across America that Mikey from the commercial had consumed a lethal dose of Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola, the combined carbonation of these two products leading to his stomach exploding. Other versions go that his head exploded, but the point is, the poor chap was said to have died as a result of this explosive mix. The story became so famous that Mikey himself, John, who is very much alive, recalled his mother receiving a phone call from someone paying their respects to her son. His mother was completely baffled, as John was perfectly fine out playing baseball. She had John's brother go to the field to make sure he was okay, though, and that's when John first heard about the wild Pop Rocks and Coke rumor going around. Around this same time, the sales of Pop Rocks started to plummet as this urban legend became more and more widespread. Number 8, Momo the Monster, aka the Missouri Monster. This is an ape-like creature that was reported by a number of witnesses in rural Louisiana in 1971 and 72. It was described as being around 7 feet tall, covered in fur, with a large pumpkin-shaped head and glowing orange eyes. The most famous sighting happened on July 11th, 1972. A teenage girl named Doris was in the kitchen. Her 2 younger brothers were out playing in the backyard when suddenly she heard them scream. Doris looked out the window and saw a large, hairy creature matching the description above, carrying a dead dog. Tons of reports would come in that year, and it eventually led to a crew of hunters being assembled to try and track the creature down, but nothing was ever found, and the sightings pretty much stopped after that. At number 7, we have Gene Simmons' his tongue. Kiss was absolutely huge in the 70s. They were pretty much the biggest band on the planet at one point, and bassist Gene Simmons was and is famous for a lot of things, one of which is his exceptionally long tongue. A tongue which he often sticks out on stage and has been known to use excessively off of it. I read his autobiography when I was 13. I learned a lot. Anyway, back in the height of Kiss's fame, rumor about the origins of the demon's massive tongue started spreading around, and the consensus was that it was actually from a cow. The story was that he'd somehow grafted it onto his real tongue. This is, of course, not the case. I don't think that technology exists to perform an operation like that, especially back then, but as soon as it does, I will look into doing it myself. Next on the list, we have the Owlman. The tale of the Owlman began with 2 reported sightings in Cornwall in 1976. The first was reported by 2 young girls who claimed to see a large winged humanoid owl creature sitting atop the bell tower of a church in the small town of Maunan, which they had been visiting with their parents. They ran back to their parents to tell them what they'd seen, and they were so visibly distraught that their father decided to cut the trip short. Just a couple months later, 2 teenage girls were camping overnight in the woods right by that very same church. One of the girls, Sally Chapman, was standing outside the tent when she heard a loud hissing sound. She turned around, and to her complete shock and horror, saw what looked to be a man-sized owl creature with glowing red eyes. It then flew up into the air. More sightings of the mysterious creature started being reported within the following days, all within the vicinity of that church. At number 5, we have another urban legend that originated in the 70s, which is also related to spiders. This is one many of you probably have heard of, the spider bite legend. There are many different versions of this story, but the main gist of it is that a woman goes on vacation to some tropical destination and gets bitten by a rare species of spider, usually on her cheek. The bite starts to swell up until she basically has a balloon on her face, at which point pops and out comes hundreds of baby spiders that had been laid inside her cheek. Luckily, this does not happen in real life. Spiders don't find the human body a good place to store their eggs, but it's understandable why this tale became so famous. It's a horrifying idea. It's an early example of body horror, the idea that there's some foreign thing growing inside your body that you just don't want there. Plus, spiders. So many people are petrified of spiders. Next up, we have the legend of the clown doll. This one is kind of a different version of the famous babysitter and the man upstairs urban legend. In this story, a babysitter is watching over kids in a very large family home with a bunch of different rooms. Before the parents leave for the night, the father tells the young babysitter to go to a specific room to watch TV once the kids go to bed, as he doesn't want her roaming the house too much. This is a bit strange, but it comes into play later. So the evening goes by as normal, and eventually the kids do go to bed, and after they've been tucked in, the babysitter makes her way to the living room to spend the remainder of her night. As soon as she walks into the room to turn on the TV, though, she immediately spots a hideous life-size clown doll, in some versions a statue, propped up in the corner. She can't stand the sight of the thing, but decides to try and ignore it and turn her attention to the television. But it's just there, staring at her from the corner of her eye. At one point, the parents call to check in, and she asks them if she can cover the clown statue with a sheet, to which the parents reply, "What clown statue?" Then, to the babysitter's horror, the clown starts to move towards her, attacking her and in some versions ending her life. In other versions, the police arrive and it's revealed that the man is an escapee from a mental institution who was living in the family home for weeks, avoiding detection due to how big the house is with so many places to hide. At number 3, we have Bunny Man. This is an urban legend featuring a crazed, axe-wielding man in a bunny costume. The legend originated in Fairfax County, Virginia in 1970, but the interesting thing about this one is that it all started from 2 very real documented incidents. The first happened on October 19th, 1970. A couple had been driving back from a football game and decided to visit a relative on their way. So they parked their car. Before they got out, they noticed something moving in the rear window. And almost as soon as they noticed this, a hatchet flew through the front passenger window, and a man in a white bunny costume started yelling at them, saying they were trespassing. Luckily, no one was harmed, and the second incident took place on October 29th. A construction security guard named Paul Phillips approached a young man standing on the porch of an unfinished home. He was wearing a bunny costume and was brandishing an axe. As the guard got closer, the man in the bunny costume said, "You are trespassing. If you come any closer, I'll chop off your head." From that point on, more and more reports started coming in about who the media now dubbed Bunny Man. As to the validity of a lot of these other sightings, it's kind of up in the air, especially when the stories started becoming more embellished. Bunny Man is now well within the urban legend category, with tales of him possessing powers or having come back from the dead. Next on the list is the Dover Demon. In the town of Dover in Massachusetts, a series of cryptid sightings occurred on April 21st and 22nd in 1977. The first was reported by 3 teenage boys who had been driving along a road at night when their headlights illuminated an odd-looking creature. It was about 3 to 4 feet tall, crawling along a stone wall, and they described it as having a large bulbous head and bright orange eyes. It had long, spindly arms and legs and was completely hairless, with rough skin like sandpaper. Just an hour after this initial sighting, 2 other teenage boys spotted the odd creature as they were walking home. Their description of the creature was exactly the same, only now it wasn't climbing a concrete wall, it was just walking on two legs, and apparently ran into a gully where it stood next to a tree. The third sighting happened the following day. A teenage girl and boy were in their car when they spotted the creature on the side of the road. All these witnesses drew pictures of the creature for police. I've found two of the original sketches online, and seeing as these are from like two separate reports, two different groups of kids, pretty crazy just how similar they are. Seems like they did see something similar to what they drew. And finally, at number 1, we have Cropsey. Cropsey was a boogeyman type urban legend that originated in New York in the 1970s. He was said to be a satanic man, sometimes sporting a hook for a hand, that lived in the abandoned Willowbrook mental institution and would come out in the dead of night to kidnap young victims who were never seen or heard from again. Stories of this nightmarish figure continued into the 80s. As it turns out, though, these stories of young ones going missing were connected to a real-life boogeyman, a man named Andre Rand. Rand had been in and out of prison for a series of disgusting crimes, but it turned out he had a long list of victims who he had kidnapped, many of which were never found. In 1988, he was finally convicted and would have been eligible for parole for some reason in 2008, but was brought to trial once again as new evidence was discovered in a kidnapping he had committed 23 years prior. He was convicted of that crime as well and remains in prison till this very day.